Okay, on some of my videos that I had posted on the YouTube channel a month ago, some of it was things that I was doing in class, working with my students, and so I had given those, the ones I was working with my students, talking about feeding the hand, and it was kind of a way to get people to understand what it is that I'm doing and try to give it a name, only because I don't have a name specifically for it. So in this circumstance, what I want to do is I want to show you that the whole concept of feeding the hand and how that works. So I'm still going to use the bandana so that you can practice at home, but I'm going to use Troy to kind of show what it is that I'm doing. All right, so as Troy comes up and I'm standing here, now I bring my hands up because remember, we're doing what? We're flinch reacting and we don't want them to punch us or whatever. But let's say he grabs both of my wrists, just reaches up and grabs a hold of my wrist. When he grabs both of my wrists, what I'm going to do is, when I talk about feeding the hand is, I'm basically going to set him up. I'm going to make him think that I'm trying to hit him in the groin. So my hand's going to go towards his groin, which is going to make him tense this hand up and try to stop it because he doesn't want me to do that. Okay? What that does though is I'm going to take this hand and I'm feeding this wrist here. So I can reach down and I can grab a hold of it. Now notice my bandana is very close together. So now I take his arm and I bring it to my hip and I bring this hand on top and I have him in a nice little wrist lock. Okay? It's extremely uncomfortable for him. Okay? So I'm not just going to stand here, but I'm trying not to hurt Troy and send him flying through the room or anything like that. This is my trap, and I can extend this out if I need to the elbow or roll him over. And at the same time, I'm going to let go of him because I don't want him to move. But I can step back, throwing him in that direction as I slide the arm out. Okay? So going back to what it is that's happening is that he's decided to grab a hold of both of my arms. So it really doesn't make a difference which hand you attack him with. As soon as you turn this hand down like you're going to grab him or go towards his groin, he's going to put tension. And all you're doing is you're just moving it so you can grab a hold of his wrist. Once you grab his wrist, this hand stays inside of his hand and it rotates with you and you pull him in and you trap him into your hip. Okay? So you can do it to either side extremely easy. It's which hand do you want to grab? Do I want to grab this hand or do I want to grab the other hand? And don't feel like when you grab a hold of someone's hand that you immediately have to extend to here. Because if I pull him here, stand up straight, I'm not making him collapse. Watch what happens when I put my hand on top of his. I've got both hands flat, he's sandwiched in, okay? And now when I have him here on my hip, he wants to stand up straight, so I'm going to take my top hand and I'm going to roll the blade of my hand around my finger. He went straight down, didn't he? I didn't have to do anything else but roll this hand down. That's going to drop him. If I step out, he's flying. Okay? So one of the things that a lot of people I see doing is when they're doing a wrist technique to protect themselves, they want to come here thinking that they're going to muscle the person down with a wrist grab. Okay? Or they try to go to the elbow and they try to turn it into a different type of wrist grab. Don't work so hard. You don't need to work so hard. Once you have a hold of that hand and you're rolling it in, keep your hands together and bring it in, okay? So for those of you that do karate and you're familiar with our with the heians, there's a technique in the heians or the pinans, whichever one they call it, okay? So in 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm trying to think which one it is. I think it's in 5. In Pinan Heian 5, there's a technique where there's an attack low, and the person does an X-hand block down, and then there's an attack high, and you're like in a forward leaning, and so as the attack high, you come up and you do this. And then once you're here, what are you doing? You're rotating this hand down, and amazingly enough, you see that because I'm sandwiching it, he's in trouble. And then you end up coming over and you strike and you step and punch or whatever else, okay? And so even if it's this hand that I catch here in my block, if I'm doing this same move, now it's the same thing as feeding the hand. But I want these two together because I don't want him standing up. I want to bring him down. So when I come over to hammer fist, I can strike him to the back of the neck. And when I step into punch, I can go through his head. Okay? So for those of you that are karate people, think about all of the same stuff. It's all in there. It all works. You're not doing anything any different. Okay? Whatever is there, go ahead. Whatever's there, you're getting a hold of it, you're cranking it down, you're rolling it down. Okay? One of the things that I've also seen people do is, if you would, Troy, grab again, just grab my hands. So in this feeding the hand move, okay, I see this happens a lot with people that they'll train in karate and they learn jiu-jitsu and they learn a bunch of various things. Nobody said I couldn't punch him. Nobody said I couldn't kick him. You know, I can knee him, I can kick him, I can do all kinds of stuff. I can come in here, I can do a block, punch, okay, throw a knee in there, I can throw a kick, I can do all kinds of kicks and punches. But one of the things that I personally learned is that when I'm dealing with a person and I can get a hold of them somehow, once I get a hand on them, and I'm just being honest with you, once I get a hand on them and I bring them here, why would I let go to hit him? Because as soon as, I don't know what his training is and I don't know what he can do. And no matter how fast I am, if I go here and I decide I'm going to let go, he's not in that same position anymore. Okay? He could have came up with an inside middle block and hit me in the face if I let go. Okay? So if I'm going to take the time to get a hold of somebody and put them on my hip, I'm not going to let this go. Okay? Don't bring them to here and say, all right, now I get him here, and then I let go and I decide to kick him and punch him and do all this other karate stuff. No. If you're here, bring them out around and drop them down to the ground and then stomp on them because that's where they're going to be laying. So keep your training realistic to what it is that you're doing. If you're trying to, if your training is, well, we're in tournaments, we're not allowed to grab, we're not allowed to grapple, we can't put a person, and once their knee touches the ground, we can't kick them, we can't, well, you're putting limitations on how you fight, that's fine. If you're putting limitations on how you spar or how you train because you do tournaments, that's fine. But understand, I teach self-defense. My job is to defend myself. So my opponent is a target from the end of his toes to the very fullest length of his hair. I don't have to be nice. He doesn't have to be nice. Because if you want it real out on the street, you better train real when you're in the dojo. Okay? You need to stop giving yourself limitations as to what you can and what you can't do. All right? So you saw the feeding hand motions and you saw the feeding hand movements.